Okay, so let's get into how to do an elimination diet. There's two main stages. The stage one is removal, stage two is reintroduction. So, stage one, removal. I often start my patients on a simple food removal of all gluten, dairy, and processed sugar for a month. That's the elimination diet that I most typically prescribe when I'm working with people. Of course, there's exceptions. Some patients we talk about autoimmune paleo, in many, we don't do any elimination diets at all. So it really depends on the patient, and we're working in collaboration with one another to decide what is the best approach for them, what they're willing to do, and how they can feel supported. And also, is this the right time to do an elimination diet? Very often, the answer to that is no. But if we're about to go about a typical elimination diet where we take out gluten, dairy, and sugar, the instructions are pretty simple for this stage. Remove all food as best as possible from your diet for the month. The goal is not necessarily to eat a perfect diet here. This means that you might buy gluten free bread, gluten free Oreos. I guess Oreos have sugar though, so let's say gluten free bread, or processed almond milk. These may not be the healthiest foods, but the goal here is to remove the potentially offending foods in order to identify if they are a problem. That's it. This is not necessarily a lifelong diet that you're about to embark on. It's a good idea to track symptoms: brain function, mood, energy levels, sleep, digestion, and so on, whatever you're dealing with. It's a good idea as well to have a plan. This is where working one to one with someone can be helpful. I like to tell patients to go home for a week before starting this to A, finish all their gluten and dairy foods or whatever other food they're supposed to eliminate, and B, consider what gluten and dairy staple foods they'll need to replace for the next month. It's often difficult to be confronted with the immediate reality of, uh-oh, what am I going to have for breakfast in the moment? And therefore, planning can be helpful, having a little bit of a strategy. I have a list of recipes download below called the Mood Diet, where you can get a grocery list and you can get some recipes that are gluten, dairy, and sugar free. How do you deal with specific situations like social events, dealing with food pushers, and restaurants? So, social events. This can be a tricky one. How do you say no to the food pushers around you? How do you kind of slip by without being rude? And what if there's nothing for you to eat when you go and hang out with people? So, in the naturopathic world, I have to say gluten and dairy free options are pretty plentiful typically. However, every now and then I'm in a place with normies where there's like pizza or sandwiches. And so if I know ahead of time, it's kind of going to be like that. So, like, for example, I was at a city council meeting for entrepreneurs and they just gave us sandwiches and I just went out for lunch. Um, if I know in advance, I'll bring my own food. I find it helpful when going to a social event to bring an appetizer or a dessert that I know I can eat when I attend a social gathering, even if I'm not asked to. And most people are really appreciative of this. In dealing with food pushers, this is tricky, especially related to your relationship with the person and your own, you know, need to people please, your own boundary issues, and, your relationship with food. But I find typically smiling and saying no is often accepted. You don't really have to get into it. I try not to. But often a kind thank you so much, I'm not hungry, or thank you, but I'm avoiding gluten for now on a doctor's recommendations might suffice. Restaurants. So at restaurants, I like to look at the menu ahead of time to plan what I'm going to eat. Most wait staff are happy to accommodate adjustments to food options, such as asking for them to remove the cheese from something or to eliminate the cream sauce, or ordering a burger or sandwich without the bread. Most restaurants have gluten friendly options, so I find this isn't typically that much of a problem anymore.